Well, the United States is calling for increased cooperation between Europe and Washington to deal with the crisis in Georgia, with Russia showing no signs of backing away from the conflict.
Over the weekend, tensions deepened, with US Vice President Dick Cheney casting the Russian government as a brutal regime that wants to return to the Cold War era.
Well, joining us this morning on the line from Ossetia is Australian freelance journalist and Russian researcher Tim Byrnes, who has been embedded with Russian forces now for a little over a week. Tim Byrnes, a very good morning to you. Can you tell us why you're there and how you became embedded with the Russian military?
Yes, good morning. I have been researching Russian military history for, I guess, sort of around 8 years. I guess with a focus on the Battle of Stalingrad, and hopefully was trying to get a book out next year. And I guess sort of I had done a little bit of research as well into the conflict in Afghanistan, the Soviet conflict. And I guess sort of I was working as a researcher at the Australian National University School of Business and Economics, and I guess sort of the conflict started, and I was sort of quite surprised because I know that, I mean, I've also lived in Russia for several years over the years, and I was just sort of amazed because I know that the Russian people, and actually the Georgians, are very close and actually call each other brothers. And I was just sort of, and I just had to go there and have a look and get the Russian point of view. I mean, there was just so much happening in the media, and it was sort of very anti-Russian, and I guess sort of I had to come over. I mean, I also wanted to research the influence and support of the United States in the region. I mean, there was talk of a new Cold War, and I thought the Cold War was, you know, communism against democracy, that form of ideology. However, the Soviet Union crumbled in 1991, and I guess sort of after the war in Iraq, I mean, I guess sort of was this sort of proof that the new Cold War, as they talk about, is going to be about energy.
So, Tim, what are you finding on this trip? Are you finding how are you finding the behaviour of the Russians? What is your opinion about this establishment of a new Cold War era?
I mean, the Russian. I mean, I've had great resources here and great cooperation from the Russians. I've been visiting hospitals. I was in a hospital today in Alagir, and that's sort of 110 kilometres from Valley, the South Ossetia capital, where they were evacuated. And I mean, there were sort of a 19-year-old boy and sort of his family and old men who were actually not combatants at all, and they were actually shot by the Georgians. I mean, Georgian military. I mean, it was sort of quite a hair-raising, I mean, sort of very emotional experience. But I mean, most Russians are not against the Georgian people, and in fact, sort of sources that I've spoken to have actually said that when the Georgian president had made the decision to take that action, actually there were quite a number of Georgian soldiers who actually refused, you know, to fight. So I mean, it's basically the Russian. It's not really about a Cold War. They don't feel that it's about a Cold War. They're sort of going in to protect the South Ossetians, who they feel have been attacked by the Georgians, the Georgian military.
Tim, I understand that you're going to be delivering a lecture at the Australian National University when you do return, and obviously, as you talked about, you're working towards a book. But how do you remain objective in this situation when you're embedded with the Russian army?
I guess sort of, I mean, I've been speaking to, I mean, I'm not embedded with them every day. I mean, I'm also going out and speaking with sort of every day the South Ossetians and Ossetians, and sort of getting their feeling, and I mean, you can really feel that that it's not really. I don't really think that's an issue at this. I mean, I'm still actually doing my research, so I mean, my analysis at this stage is that the Russians have, in fact, gone to the defence of the South Ossetians.
OK, Tim Byrnes, we do thank you very much for your time this morning here on First Edition.
Great, thank you very much.
Emergency evacuations are continuing in Cuba and Florida as Hurricane Ike menaces its way towards the US Gulf Coast. The Category 4 storm has already roared over the Bahamas, and it's now feared that Ike could threaten New Orleans, which was evacuated last week due to Hurricane Gustav.
With little natural protection from the wind and the wall of water it brings, the Turks and Caicos Islands lay exposed to the full fury of Hurricane Ike. As it twisted through, Ike lay waste to almost everything in its path. 80% of the homes in this Caribbean island have been damaged. The fishing fleet has been almost completely wiped out. Hurricane Ike, a Category 4 storm, has been winding its way through the Caribbean. The Turks and Caicos Islands lay right in the middle of its path. Fortunately, a mass evacuation moved tourists and locals away from danger. But the menace has not diminished. A storm surge threatening waves of up to 18 feet could follow. This picture from space shows the sheer size of this awesome storm. It's the third major hurricane to ravage the Caribbean in what has already been a deadly season. Haiti, reeling from a hammering from Hurricane Hannah, was spared Ike's full power. But the storm's outer rain bands could unleash torrential downpours. And with hundreds dead and thousands in desperate need of food, clean water and shelter, Ike could make the wretched conditions much, much worse. Next on Ike's unstoppable path is Cuba. Ike's predecessor, Gustav, already smashed over 140,000 homes to pulp here. Cubans dread this latest storm with winds of up to 135 miles an hour will destroy much more. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.